What? Fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. How lies are making the poor and the middle class poor. Guys, this book, straight freaking gold, all right? Shows you how to invest like a banker. Shows you how to make tons of intellectual growth by overcoming traditional limitations to education systems, and absolutely shifted my entire paradigm on paper assets. And specifically, like, some of this stuff's a little bit out there, and with a background in investments, he's more of a real estate guy. Kiyosaki, big real estate guy, not a big equity stock guy, which is totally cool. There are some insanely valuable insights in this text, even if that's not you. And that's totally okay, because what you learn from this is freaking huge, okay? You guys see how many bookmarks I put in this freaking book? Like, honestly, this book is insane. Okay? He's talking about, the stories he's gone through. And one of the biggest things that Kiyosaki breaks down in this book is actually this idea of gold, okay? And he's super into gold. One of his rules is that take the amount of money that you want to make per month and then own that much in gold, right? So if you want to make $1,000 a month, own $1,000 worth of gold. If you want to make $1 million a month, own $1 million worth of gold. I think this is a little bit more like on that whole goal setting thing, and it's like you set goals and you see if it happens. But like, honestly, it's kind of cool little thing he did. He talked about how he was with his wife Kim, and they had no money, but they accumulated just a little bit of gold, and then it pushed them to create that much value per month in income. And then they've just grown and grown and grown. Now he has millions of dollars worth of gold. He makes millions of dollars a month. And this is all based on his underlying idea of investing in real estate and then using the profits to invest in more real estate using 1031 likewise exchanges, or just reinvesting profits, and to buy hard assets like gold. He's really big into hard money because he looks at traditional banking systems, leverage institutions, and specifically the fractional reserve banking system, and how governments can basically just print money, right? And he says, look, this is crap, all right? And he wants to invest in gold, right? There's this really cool chart he looks at, and in this chart, what he's basically showing is the amount of money that the U.S. government injects into the economy. So here we see very little injection, but then bam, right? 2008 crash. They have massive growth. This is actually in 1923, injecting a whole bunch of money before the Great Recession, and then the same thing happened in 2008. Is the government printing a ton of fake money. 2008 was the biggest time period. They went from trillion to 2-3 trillion just a couple years, and now it's just gone up and up. It's this exponential growth, all because of this idea, and this is something he focuses a lot on. Is this there's no gold standard, right? So there's no basis for whatever the heck they're doing. And that's totally crazy, because it all stems from this internal ability to fundamentally shift mindsets and ideas and perspectives, so that instead of focusing on cash and actual value in the system, you see Kiyosaki and he's looking and he says, everything's BS because it's all paper, right? None of it actually stems from this value, and he focuses on gold because gold, he calls it God's money, right? This idea that it's always going to be there. And he also looks at cryptocurrencies, and he calls those people's money, right? And it's this idea of no centralized entity that can just print. And that fundamentally shifts what he does, right? That shifts every part of him, because he believes wholeheartedly that, look, gold is just the way to go. And that's what he talks about in a whole bunch of the book. It's this idea of using gold as a way to store value over dollars, which is great. You don't want to be holding money, right? Because of inflation. Government just prints money. Average inflation nowadays is 2%. Used to be 18%. And he looks at that, and it's like this thing of like the money is always decreasing in value. So over the long term, it just decreases. And that's why you want to hold your money in assets, right? Hold your money in assets, it increases, and it's fueled by inflation. So if the value of the dollar goes down, asset prices are going to go up, and that's a big principle, obviously, for him holding gold, which is historically not necessarily the best investment at all compared to global indices. But at the same time, he's got, it's a safer, it's like there's no risk to holding gold. And that's something he focuses on a lot, is this idea that there is no risk to holding gold since there's no counterparty risk. So in a bank, right, the bank can go bankrupt. The bank can over leverage themselves since it's a fractional reserve system. And you can lose your money, right? If they go bankrupt, and there's FDIC insurance, but it's only up to a certain amount, right? And it's this idea of insurance versus the underlying trust. And it obviously comes down to psychology, and we saw it in the crash of 1929, right? This idea that if everyone rushes the bank, they're going to get screwed. But like, there is significant risk to you holding money at a bank, and especially if you're above that insurance limit. That insurance exists because there's risk to you holding money in a bank versus holding gold. You just, as long as you get proper security, and that's something he talks about, is this idea of like having global vaults and having a great way to protect yourself against theft, which is a big problem with holding physical gold. And he's a big proponent too of physical gold, right? This idea of paper gold isn't real, right? You can have one thing of gold, issue 50 ETF shares of gold. And so he's looking at leverage in markets and assets, which is really interesting, especially looking at commodities, which are supposed to represent one-to-one physical identities. And we see this a whole lot in cryptocurrency markets, especially with Tether. Tether was this idea that you would deposit $1 and you would get one Tether, and you could use Tether to transact on cryptocurrency networks. But what they started to freaking do, they're supposed to have one-to-one reserves and be accountable, is they just started printing money. Just like the US government. When you give central power to a company or a government or a group of individuals, they will print money. That's exactly what happened with Tether. They were supposed to be a reliable company, just like the US government was supposed to be reliable, until they came off the gold standard. They went to Bretton Woods and they said, look, we will be on the gold standard. We will be the national currency, the international currency for everyone. And then they go there, they tell them that, and yet Nixon takes it off the gold standard. He never comes back. Says it was temporary, never comes back. What happens? U.S. government remains in power. The U.S. dollar is still the global currency, at least as of this video. If you guys saw that inverted yield curve video, we got some serious freaking problems coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to be an issue. But look, still up there. What's that mean? It means that it's all backed by nothing. And it's not just nothing, it's negative because of the insane amount of increased printing and increased debt the US government's taken on. It's this serious issue. And if you guys have seen Big Debt Crises by Ray Dalio, like, people are going to get screwed because you have basically, he looks at it as from a very, very nice number standpoint, and how there were billions and trillions of dollars in debt in the '08 crash created because of fake financial assets. And I'm not going to go too much into it because I talk about it a lot more on my podcast, but the idea is that you had homes, you have mortgages, and then you created mortgage-based assets and sold those to Wall Street, and then created derivatives of those assets, and then created insurance for those assets. And basically you just squeeze so much from the mortgage industry into this little condensed asset that people could invest in called a mortgage-backed security, consumer debt obligations, all of these very, very fake assets coming from just mortgages. And that's what caused the crisis, right? They created trillions and trillions of dollars of fake assets that were derivatives of assets. And when that stuff crashed and the insurance companies failed, and specifically when one company failed and someone tried to get their insurance for the debt, and someone tried to come in and get their credit default swap credit, that would work for 1 or 2 companies, but then the insuring company would go bankrupt, which means that all the public pension funds would go bankrupt. It's just this chain effect of all the debt collapsing at once, instantly. And that's exactly what Robert Kiyosaki looks at in here, because now instead of trillions, we're a quadrillion in debt. A quadrillion. Like, that's a trillion times 1,000. That's a million times a million times 1,000. That's freaking huge. It's this insane number that is so incomprehensible because it's massive. The debt has just freaking skyrocketed internationally because of the creation of these assets, right? These derivatives. And that's something that he talks about so much in this book. And it's so powerful because it'll fundamentally shift the way that you look at, basically, we just saw the inverted yield curve. And you guys saw that video on the inverted yield curve. Like, a recession is coming, okay? This is what he breaks down. He puts down the facts of where this recession will come from, why it will happen, the basis of everything. It all stems from this growth and change. That's the power. That's the difference. So please, 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 guys, this book is freaking insane. I covered like 4% of it today. There's so much more on mindset. It'll shift your paradigm. It's insane. He looks at like how he had this fake teacher in college, and this teacher literally was a marketing teacher, didn't know crap about it. He never did it, right? It's this idea of learning from people that do it. I wrote this book. After 2+ years of trading stocks, I freaking did it. And that was the point, right? Same thing we looked at with his college professors. They weren't doing it. He had this marketing teacher, never freaking marketed anything. He had this bicycle store, and he took the class on a field trip to this bike store so that he could sell them bikes. That was the biggest thing he ever did in his class. He sold Robert a bike, Kiyosaki, he bought a bike. He used it for years. This is just one of the things he realized on his path to understanding that these are not real teachers. They weren't there for him. They were just there to make money. All right? They were getting paid to teach an accountant teacher. Never been a freaking accountant. Learn from the right people. Understand education from the right people. Just one of the things in this book. This book, absolutely crazy. Fundamentally shifted my ideas on psychology behind economic markets. There's a whole bunch in here about international debt and specifically like over-leveraged companies and clients based on this idea of trillions and trillions and trillions, quadrillions in debt. It's freaking huge. This book will change the way you look at gold, the way you look at these investment vehicles that are traditionally poor and they have bad performance, but in very specific circumstances, and specifically the time period this is published, just came out, right, is this idea that we're really close to a big recession. And this book will get you to a point where not even based on stocks and indexes and trading with technical analysis, like just investing in gold, investing in crypto, investing in these assets that are going to sustain and getting your cash out of the assets that are going to freaking crash in the next couple of years. It's a serious concept, really big stuff. Can't recommend enough you guys grab a copy of this book. I have a link below. It's freaking huge, 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 huge. So please take this seriously. Go out there, apply it. Absolutely crush it. Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate it. Have an amazing, amazing, amazing day. And don't lose your shirt in this recession, okay? Sound awesome? Go out there, crush it. Thanks, guys. Bye.